Watch highlights of the best of the action on the BBC Sport website and app. But we can now take you on the radio to southeast of here in Guwahati to Singapore. It's coverage of the first practice session of this weekend's Singapore Grand Prix. Harry Benjamin, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Henry. Yes, indeed. Good afternoon. Welcome to Singapore. It's round 18 of the 2025 Formula One season. Day has turned to night at Marina Bay, where free practice 2 is just a few moments away. It is myself, Harry Benjamin, up in the commentary box with you. The some 1,600 lighting projectors have lit up to illuminate this just over 4.9 kilometre racetrack that, with its tight and twisty nature, bumps and immense heat and humidity, make it an incredible challenge. We've got a F1 journalist and host of the Piranha Club podcast, Rebecca Clancy, alongside me. Hi Rebecca. Fernando Alonso was quickest in FP1, so yes. This is Aston Martin's weekend to be had, right?
Yeah, Aston Martin 1-2, that's where we're going with this, is it? Early start?
I was waiting for you to put me down. I'm quite used to the journal doing that.
Oh no, it's fine. I think Fernando Alonso will not be on the top step by the end of the weekend. I think we shouldn't pay attention to FP1. It's obviously run in the daylight, which neither qualifying nor the race will be. As you say, this is the session where we'll really start to get an impression of how the cars are running, a bit more of the pecking order. If Verstappen can take it to 3 wins on the trot with that Red Bull at a circuit he has never won at. So still plenty to look out for in this session.
Absolutely, and lots to discuss in and around what is going on the track, but our eyes and ears on the ground in the pit lane. It's Jenny Gow. Good evening.
Good evening. What a beautiful evening it is too. Dark sky above me, the voluminous and numerous illuminations shining down on the track now. It's turned from night to day. No, day to night even. That doesn't make any sense, does it? But this is the sort of thing you have to deal with in Singapore, because we all stay on European time over here. It's a bit strange. So you go to bed about 5 o'clock in the night time, and you wake up at about midday, and try to get your body clock in tune with that, and eating turns into a fun game in the evening. But that's one of those things being here in Singapore. We love it, but it is a bit strange. Anyway, Oscar Piastri is in front of me. He's in his number 81 car, looking all prepped and ready to go. Interestingly, both drivers at McLaren are wearing these new cool seats, which should hopefully cool their internal body by about 1 centigrade. And apparently that's quite a lot when it comes to their brain functionalities and their cognitive health. So it'll be interesting to see their feedback from this session and how they go with them. There are limits to how effective these vests are. So some teams have them, some drivers don't want to wear them. They're trying them out. Let's see how many races when it comes to Sunday.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen. Yeah, actually, Beck, maybe it's worth giving a bit of context as to why we're seeing and talking so much about these cooling vests, which was really a system, I suppose, we saw implemented after Qatar in 2023, where a couple of drivers really suffered with the immense heat there. And it's sort of off the bat. We're talking about it so much this weekend because the FIA have put out for the first time ever a document declaring a heat hazard. So what's going on here?
So you're right, Qatar 2023 turned into somewhat of a sort of a three-pronged farce, as it were. We had one driver throwing up in his helmet, other drivers who needed help from ambulances stationed around near where they came off, another driver that just dropped out completely, couldn't handle the heat. So rightly the FIA looked into this, and so what we're seeing now this weekend in Singapore is that they have improvised what was initially kind of described in the easiest way to understand it as aircon going into the cockpit. So teams have dry ice, most have put it in the nose of the car, and then that's connected to these pipes that go through their vests, the driver's vests. As you can imagine, it's already pretty tight in that cockpit, so this is why we're having some issues with the drivers saying it's uncomfortable to wear. The point being, as Jen says, to bring down their body temperatures, because it can get as hot as 60 degrees in that cockpit, which is, as you can imagine, very hard to function in, and yet they're still travelling at 200 miles an hour around this racetrack. So yes, we have a heat hazard this weekend. It is optional for the drivers to wear them. From next year it will be mandatory, but so far it is optional. If they choose not to wear them, they'll have to to just add half a kilo of ballast to the car. And so what we're seeing now is the drivers, as Jen was saying with the McLaren boys, that they are trialling them in these practice sessions. This one particularly because it's representative of what they will experience over the Saturday, Sunday. And so I suspect most of the drivers will be going out with it. Some of them have tried them before. Carlos Sainz wasn't a big fan in Jeddah. George Russell didn't mind it too much. I think it was in Bahrain. Lewis Hamilton's never used it, but he said he's tried it on and it's a bit itchy. So we'll hear a bit more from the drivers at the end of the day. I'm sure they'll be talking about it. But yeah, the first time we're seeing this, so it'll be interesting to see how they get on, because they've got to keep it cool. And keeping liquids cool in a car that gets to 60 degrees is difficult. They have water bottles, but most of them don't really bother because it's basically like tea by lap 2. Carlos Sainz, as I mentioned, tried it in Jeddah and said that the water wasn't cool anymore after about 15 laps. So we'll see how they get on. They'll obviously have improved it by then.
Absolutely. By the way, session started, green light on at the end of the pit lane, but no mad rush to get out there just yet. So in the meantime, let's head over to 5 Live Race Centre and bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. And Andrew, what are you making of these cooling vests and the situation going on there? Not mandatory, but it will be, I believe it will become compulsory for next season?
It will, yes, when they've been hopefully revised a bit more. One of the questions at the moment is that if you put these vests on, first of all, they have a slightly more insulating capacity than a normal fireproof undergarment, and therefore if you've not got cooling liquid flowing through them, then they make the drivers hotter than they would have been if they weren't wearing them. So that's why, as Beck was saying, that this issue of whether the system lasts long enough for an entire race is quite a serious one, because it's one thing being trying to cope with a cockpit that can be anywhere between 40 and 60 degrees. It's another thing trying to cope with that when liquid's being pumped next to your body, which is even warmer than you would be in any case. So it's a bit of a sort of ongoing scientific experiment. Each team has its own solution to it. I spent some time talking to McLaren about the details of their system yesterday. Let's see how it goes for the rest of the weekend. Obviously, it's well intentioned, and the drivers are generally supportive of it, but they do have their reservations.
Yeah, but another session coming up for testing that, crucially. Just while we've got you, Andrew, as well, as the cars start to file out of the pit lane. Obviously, FP1, very different conditions, unrepresentative to what we're about to get now, and when it comes to qualifying and the race. But Fernando Alonso fastest in the Aston Martin. I mean, this is a track that you could say, high downforce, similar to Zandvoort, Hungary, where the Aston Martin went well. So is that a positive, encouraging sign for Fernando Alonso and the team?
Well, I was expecting them to be more competitive relatively this weekend than other tracks, because their car is more suited to this track. It works better at high downforce. It's aerodynamically compromised when they're running low downforce settings like they were at Baku and Monza the last 2 races. Don't forget that Alonso and Stroll both qualified pretty well in Hungary and Zandvoort before Monza. Also, on top of that, you've got a couple of other factors. Alonso's traditionally really good at Singapore. I don't think a teammate's ever beaten him here. I'd have to check that, but that's what Aston Martin are telling me. In fact, I was speaking to someone who's part of Stroll's team earlier, and he was going, look, we're a bit stuffed this weekend because Fernando put a second on Esteban Ocon, a second on Jenson Button. We haven't got a chance. If we can get within half a second, we'll be doing well. And then the other thing is that he tends to be a bit quicker relative to the competition in the first session because he gets up to speed so quickly, and everyone kind of catches up a little bit as the weekend goes on. So I think there's a bit of all that mixed up. I would expect him to be qualifying around about maybe 7th, 8th in the Aston Martin, but let's see come tomorrow.
Did you just say you put a second on Jenson Button?
Someone told me that at Aston Martin. Maybe it's wrong, but that's what I'm just repeating what they said.
Wow, okay, well, fair play. Thank you very much, Andrew Benson. We will check in with you throughout the remainder of this Practice 2 session, which is underway. And for those who wish to do a sync-up, it is 55 minutes and 37, 36, 35, 34 seconds remaining. And after initial lull in proceedings, pretty much everybody is out on track, with the exception of George Russell, which I think we can expect to see him shortly. Hartley and everybody out there on the medium tyre, with the exception of the two Aston Martins who have opted for the hard tyre. So this will be a little bit more of a representative session. Crucially though, Beck, this will be a really important session for Alex Albon in the Williams, who was rather sidelined in smoky fashion with some brake issues in FP1. So he has made it back out in this session. So a bit of lost time to make up for the tyre driver.
I don't think he'll be too worried. As we said, the daytime session, you know, if you're going to miss one, that's the one you want to miss. It looks like they've just replaced the entire rear. The brakes were on fire, basically. Big, thick smoke coming out of it. I think Alex Albon looked incredibly uncomfortable in the car. If you didn't see it, he, you know, kind of rubbing his eyes and looked like he wanted to get out of that car as quickly as possible. But good, very good that Williams have managed to get him back out on track, because this is the practice session that really matters. And Williams will be riding high after that Carlos Sainz podium in Baku, and will be wanting another good weekend.
Yeah, so just a bit more on Albon's issue. James Vowles has said in between now and FP1 is confirming it's 100% to do with a hardware issue in the brake system. Everything was absolutely fine until he exited turn 10 on that lap. So he caught it fairly quickly, but even by then you could just see it was holding residual rear brake pressure and just enough to basically warm the discs up. Exactly why, I cannot tell you yet, but he is back out onto the circuit along with everybody else. All 20 drivers out on track, and the times are coming in. First flying laps, Piastri was quickest. That is immediately eclipsed by Max Verstappen, who goes to the top, a 1:33.128. But we'll expect to see the times tumble throughout the session as we hear the sounds of Gabriel Bortoleto in his Sauber. Never raced here before. The rookies have not raced here. And as he makes his way towards turn 7, the left-hander just has a bit of a lock-up and has to bail out of it. The runoff area waiting for him. And it is a tricky circuit. This is what a lot of drivers like. It's tight, it's narrow, you've got to be precise. It's like a jungle of walls and hairpins that is illuminated by floodlights. You have that run down to turn 1 where it's almost an S shape that weaves you through 2, then 3 as you head back on yourself through the left-hander, slightly uphill through Republic Boulevard as you then curve to the right-hand side down Raffles Boulevard, which will be another of the DRS zones that takes you through that slight right-hand kink when you're in qualifying, taking that flat out towards the left-hander of 7. Then it's a short drive to turn 8, a quick right-hander. It curves you round then as you approach turn 10, another short blast towards where the old Singapore sling was. Of course, with the changes to the circuit a couple of years ago, that has all been changed, so it's better for overtaking opportunities. You then find yourself heading over the Anderson Bridge at 11 and 12 before making your way over to the hairpin at 13, down the Esplanade, another dose of DRS waiting for you, and Charles Leclerc just making his way now through turn 14, the right-hander, another kink to the left as you head down Raffles Avenue, turn 15, the DRS wing flies open as you then slam on the brakes. Turn 16 and 17, a quick right left-hander, and you get dangerously close to that exit wall before you're then spat out the final 2 corners as the cars fly underneath the Singapore Flyer Ferris wheel, which stands at over 540 feet overlooking the entire Marina Bay street track, and that will be a lap of this 4.9 kilometre, just over 3 miles and 19 corners to contend with. It makes qualifying quite a spectacle, doesn't it? But it can get quite tricky, like any street circuit, with sort of managing that traffic. So communication is at an all-time high here.
It is. This is an incredibly tricky circuit, and actually it brings out the best in drivers. And I think I have to have an issue with Benny here, because I was listening to the preview pod, and in it he said that he thought that Charles Leclerc's 2019 pole lap was just as good as Lewis Hamilton's 2018 lap. Now, I disagree with this. I think Hamilton's 2018 lap was utterly incredible. I think you need to put it into context as well. It was at a time when he was doing all of his fashion stuff and music, and he had flown from London to New York to Shanghai back to Singapore, and I think we'd worked out at the time it was about 25,000 miles he had flown. We were all a bit sceptical. He arrived in Singapore on the Thursday. We did media day and we were saying, how are you feeling? And he looked a bit sort of, like he'd just flown 25,000 miles. And then he came out and he did what is an absolutely, utterly brilliant lap. Not just of his career, I think it's right up there. And if you ever watch the onboard, it is amazing. And actually, Harry, you and I, we watched the onboard of Charles Leclerc's lap because I was thinking, I just don't think it's as good. And I don't. Having watched the onboard of Leclerc's, I don't think it's as good as Hamilton's.
It can't be understated how good Hamilton is around this Singapore circuit as well. 4 times a pole sitter, 4 times a winner, 7 times a podium finisher in Singapore. Certainly going well. He's qualified in the top 5 at all 15 Singapore Grand Prix. And even though Baku wasn't quite what Ferrari hoped for, lost out on the promise they showed in practice, feeling confident, at least on Hamilton's side of the garage, that he's a bit more comfortable with his car as it currently stands. 49 minutes and 53 seconds on the clock. Piastri is now top with a 1:32.7, but Lando Norris is flying right now. Fastest through the first sector, fastest in the middle sector. Bit of traffic as he comes out of turn 17. The final 2 corners to contend with. Pit lane entry to his left. Is it purple? No, it's green in the final sector. It's a personal best. It's not fastest overall in that sector, but it's fastest overall on the timing tower. Half a second clear of Oscar Piastri. Norris with a 1:32.226, the benchmark in these early stages. The 2 Mercedes cars out there at the moment. Kimi Antonelli with a big lock-up as he tried to turn into the right-hander, bails out of it into the runoff area. A nicely choreographed spin to get him back out onto the circuit for Kimi Antonelli. That was a little further around down at turn 14. Meanwhile, though, George Russell currently circulating down in 20th and last, but he's on a lap at the moment. Let's head down to pit lane. Jenny Gow.
Yes, I'm outside the Mercedes garage. In the middle, there's the engineers who are looking over and feeding back to their drivers. But on the other side, the mechanics all look at what's going on, because they've got 2 big screens on either side. They also have timing boards up there. And actually, you can see as they do a replay of Kimi Antonelli just losing it, then overdriving, turning it around, a beautiful handbrake turn, then getting back on track. They were all watching that, and now they've all moved out to the pit lane with their fans, just giant leaf blowers, in fact, just to put that fan into the brake duct, just to get some, just being told to leave out the way, that's okay. Always good not to run over. So they'll cool it down and send them back out again. So that's Kimi Antonelli back out on track, just coming in for a little light relief, maybe just to check on those tyres, make sure he didn't flat spot anything, and then they send him on his way. And once again, I seem to be in the way of the Mercedes mechanics, so I will disappear from here and go somewhere else.
Nah, continue being in the way, Jenny. It's always the best way.
No, you get into trouble for that.
Yeah, but trouble's a good thing. We'll let you try and get out of trouble then. You can join us when you found some trouble once more. Changes all throughout the timing screens as the laps keep coming in. Verstappen just pops himself up into second. It's Norris, Verstappen, Lawson third ahead of Piastri, then Sainz the top 5 with Alonso, Antonelli, Hamilton, Tsunoda and Charles Leclerc the top 10, as we get a look at Lando Norris from his flying run a moment ago, just skimming the barrier on the exit of turn 17. Just a light touch, nothing too much to worry about for Lando Norris there, and I think Ollie Behrman might well be headed for the same bit of the wall, and actually his one was a little bit more of a step out of his rear, but didn't make contact with the wall, but just had to do a correction on the steering wheel for the British rookie, another of the drivers who has not raced here, along with the likes of Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoleto, Behrman with Antonelli too. Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto actually have raced here. Liam Lawson took his career first points here back in 2023 when he qualified 10th, actually pushed Max Verstappen out of Q3, and Liam Lawson then went on to finish 9th in the race. Colapinto finished 11th here. I don't know if you remember, he was in the Williams, he qualified 12th, and he had what Alex Albon described as a dive bomb move down the inside at turn 1 on lap 1 and gained about 3 positions on the first lap. It was exceptional from Colapinto. I'm not sure they're quite expecting to be as high up as 11th in the Alpines this weekend. While we're on Antonelli though, Beck, I mean, what did you make of his weekend in Baku? See, there was a lot of continued chatter about how he's getting on in his rookie season. He hasn't had the best European leg for his Formula One journey so far, but Baku looked like a marked improvement from the young Italian.
Yes, it was a massive improvement from Antonelli, and it needed to be, because he came off the back of the European races. There were 9 European races. He scored just 3 points across them. Monza, the last one. Toto Wolff, somewhat uncharacteristically from him, said that he had been underwhelming. And when your team principal says that about you, it's never a good thing. Antonelli arrived in Baku saying that he was going to use it as fuel, and he did. And actually he needed to as well, because I thought it was quite a strong weekend from Mercedes in general. It's obviously pushed them up into second in the constructors, though only 4 points between them and Ferrari. But Antonelli absolutely did what he needed to do at that race. What is important now is that he carries that on, because one race does not make a good driver. And I think with Antonelli, he's been a bit underwhelming from what we were all expecting from him this season. I think, Mercedes very much kept him under wraps. They were protecting him, as they rightly should. He's still incredibly young. He's only just turned 19. But he's not quite had the impact on Formula One that we were perhaps led to believe that he might have. He's bedding in, and that's absolutely fine. One thing about Mercedes, unlike Red Bull, I would say, is that they will give him that time, and Toto Wolff very much will support him. And despite saying that he was underwhelming publicly, which is unusual, I think he is the sort of guy who will put his arm around his shoulder and look out for him. So I think Mercedes, as I was saying about Williams earlier, also coming off a very strong weekend. That 4th place in Baku was great for the team, but also great for him as a driver, a real confidence boost. And this sport is a lot about confidence.
Don't we know it? Yeah, that 4th was his best since his podium in Canada. Also, I believe it was the race published an article outlining some sim issues ahead of, I think, Zandvoort and Monza, which really affected Kimi Antonelli in his preparations for the race weekends and put him on the back foot. So it's not always within his control, some of his prep work, but you also go back to, we spoke about it a lot of the time, Imola, where maybe he wasn't quite in the right frame of mind because he had brought all of his school friends there and just was trying to lap up the energy of, from Bologna. It really was, unlike Monza, a proper home race for him. But I suppose that's all part of the learning process a rookie driver goes through.
It is, and it's not great when the sim isn't quite set up to translate from that data onto what's on track. But when you have a more experienced driver, they go out and do a couple of laps in FP1 and they say to their engineer, lads, listen, this isn't right, the sim has been telling us this, but it's this instead, and they can react a lot quicker. He is still a rookie, it's his first season, so he just needs a bit of time, and as I say, I think Mercedes will give him that time to bed in.
Just talking about sims, that actually jogs my mind. I was reading something about Yuki Tsunoda, and he is in this probably richer vein of form coming into this race weekend. He had a very good last time out in Baku, well, very good for his standards, and I think he did some really good defensive driving out there as well. And I just wonder, he spent some time in the sim, which did go very well for him, unlike Kimi Antonelli. And apparently it's freed him up, it's given him a bit more confidence in the car, and that together with Laurent Mekias coming to the team and taking over as team principal.
Oh, sorry, really, Jen, can I just cut in, because we've got George Russell with a broken front wing. He's still moving, he rejoins the circuit, has to do a 180 turn to get himself back facing the right way, but George Russell has had a moment in his Mercedes down at turn 16 and 17, so he doesn't have very far to go to the pit lane, but he's picked up a fair bit of damage and locks up the front left tyre, which also looks like it's been punctured as well as he makes his way back to the pits. But a heavy hit with the wall then for George Russell in, as we talk about one Mercedes, the other makes it back with one less front wing. We haven't seen how it happened yet. Hopefully we'll be able to get the replay shortly. But for George Russell, who has finished every race so far in 2025, having an FP2, where he is lucky to make it back to the garage where the team immediately get to work. Actually, Jen, I don't know if are you down there near Mercedes? Can you have a little look?
I am legging it down the pit lane in the safest way possible to just pull up in front of the Mercedes. So they've already got a new front wing on the car. I'm just looking at the tyres. They're pretty flat spotted, but I can't actually tell if they're the tyres he came in on or if they've replaced him to older ones. So they're having to lift the car up manually. So there's about 5 mechanics on the front just trying to get the front wheel arch up.
I'll tell you what, Jeb, we're just getting a look at it as well, the replay. Red flag has come out, by the way, and he's coming to the end of the DRS zone, into the braking zone of 16, turns it into the right-hander and just loses the rear and goes straight on. You can tell it's been raining, because as soon as he hits the barriers, a huge a bit of water is exploded from them onto...
You all right? That's weird. Yeah.
He says he's all right, saying that was weird. That did look weird. It's almost like he was sort of half sliding midway through the corner, but not going the right way.
Looked like both rear tyres locked up.
Well, he managed to get himself back to the pit lane, but it has brought out the red flag, so clock still continues to count down in practice. Everybody goes back to the pit lane. Let's head back to Jen.
Yeah, I'm just looking at George's front left tyre. It's so strange. It wouldn't be released off of the wheel hub. And it's totally flat spotted, but it looks like at 50 speed, like someone's kicked it in. So heavy must have been the impact. I've not seen a tyre dented like that so perfectly. And I just wonder if it's done any damage to the actual drum and gone through, or if the casing that surrounds these Pirelli tyres is strong enough to withhold that force. So looking at it, it looks fairly decent in the inside, but they are taking off that drum to have a really good look at it.
Thanks, Jen. Well, red flag is out. 39 minutes and 30 seconds. 29, 28, 27 seconds on the clock. Russell recovering back to the garage without a front wing. Damage to the tyres as well. Down at turn 16. He's left a bit of debris behind there in the form of pretty much the entirety of his front wing. So that has brought out the red flag. Just looked like he carried a bit too much speed in there, hit the brakes and locked up the rear as he slid into the wall, pretty much straight on into the barriers. But we heard him on the radio, okay, but said he found that a little bit weird, as we will get the session underway shortly. Still waiting. Indeed, the red flag has gone in now. The track has been declared clear, although it's back to yellow flag, so I wonder we're getting those notices again like we did in Baku. But everybody then just still being wheeled back into their garages. Alex Albon losing out on some more crucial track time there. If we come back to before that was all happening, Jenny was just talking about Yuki Tsunoda, and we talk about sim challenges that Kimi Antonelli was facing. And yes, it was a good run for Yuki Tsunoda. Ironically finished behind Liam Lawson in the end. Did manage to get the overcut on Lawson, but cold tyres left him rather at risk and easy prey for the Kiwi. And then overtaking meant really nobody passed each other for those last 10 laps in Baku. He's never scored a point in Singapore, has Yuki Tsunoda. He's also said certain changes have been made that have helped him, but he's left it rather vague at that. But I wonder, it must be he's getting now the same parts as Max Verstappen. The Laurent Mekies factor, I don't think that can be diminished, because that was his boss at Racing Bulls, and he's rejoined him. He knows Yuki Tsunoda well. They clearly have a good working relationship, and as we've been talking about, Mekies is bringing a different dynamic to Red Bull now, which is ultimately perhaps lifting the entire team up, not just Yuki. Yeah,
I definitely agree with you. We shouldn't underestimate the relationship that Yuki Tsunoda has with Mekies. They were together obviously at Racing Bulls, where Mekies was before he was promoted to the top team, and we have seen a different Tsunoda coming out. He seems more confident. He seems like he's listening more to... we were kind of talking about how the approach has changed since Mekies has come in, very much listening more to the drivers, taking obviously what the engineers say and all that data, but putting those two things together, whereas previously it seemed like it was more about more about the engineering side of it. So I don't think we'll probably find out, not certainly while he's still racing, what he's doing different. As Jen mentioned, he has been in the sim quite a lot as well. He's been back at base in Milton Keynes, where the Red Bull factory is, working there as well. So I think it's very good. So when Tsunoda first came into Formula One, I think you could probably argue he wasn't taking it completely seriously. And he lived out in just outside of Milton Keynes as part of the Red Bull family. But he openly admitted that he was never cooking for himself. He was basically the best customer of the local takeaways, and he ate a lot of pizzas. And it was decided to move him out to near the Racing Bulls factory in Faenza in Italy. And they put him on a strict diet. They kind of got him to be, you're a Formula One driver, you need to start thinking like a Formula One driver. These aren't the days of the 70s where you could eat what you wanted and fitness wasn't part of it. So he has been very much taken into that stable. They've very much pushed hard to get him where he is now, and I think he's just in that next push. So he kind of settled into that rhythm with the Racing Bulls. Then he obviously got promoted this year when he hadn't been expecting it. He'd wanted it last year, missed out, then got it this year. And so now he's where he wants to be. It's always a bit tricky. Is it a poison chalice being Max Verstappen's teammate? Possibly. I think there are many people before him who would argue yes. So it's a difficult challenge. Verstappen is utterly, utterly phenomenal. You cannot understate how just absolutely amazing he is. And so Tsunoda, it has been a difficult job, possibly one of the hardest on the grid, really, because your only job as a driver in F1 is to beat your teammate.
I also think, he didn't get the full pre-season either with the team. That was obviously Liam Lawson, and we all know how that went. And he was more off the pace than Tsunoda was when he first joined. But I read that before Baku, Red Bull hadn't had 2 cars inside the top 8 since Austin in 2024, which is a fair expanse of time, and just goes to show everyone now looks maybe through rose-tinted glasses at how good a job Sergio Perez was doing, when towards the end, we all thought he's fallen off the wagon, he's completely lost it. There were times where he really showed he could take it to Verstappen and actually be able to help Verstappen take a title and be the Minister of Defence and hold second place in the Drivers' Championship and give Red Bull the Constructors' win. And then that kind of, with Lawson and Tsunoda coming in, and then you relook at Albon and Gasly, it just kind of highlights a little bit how tricky it is to slot into that second seat. I mean, Jenny, do you think we'll stop having this second seat chat at Red Bull when we get to next year and it's a reset?
Never. It just seems to always be with the team from almost their existence to now. And I don't know if a regulation change will change that. I do know a team principal change can change that. Bearing in mind, Christian Horner was in charge of this team for near enough 20 years. Now, culture is a very important thing when it comes to an F1 team. We did a sit-down and a live studio audience version of the Checkered Flag podcast on Wednesday here in Singapore, joined by some amazing guests and panellists. But Jonathan Wheatley joined us. He's now the team principal at Sauber, was formerly with Red Bull, obviously, as performance director and in charge of the actual running of the team. And he was saying that changing the culture of a team isn't an overnight job. It's not a quick job. It's not a quick fix, but actually doing it properly and looking at what they have now, where they want to be. And obviously Sauber turning into Audi next year, it's a massive deal for them. But he was saying that the culture change has been massive in the last year. And I think that's the same thing that will play out at Red Bull now that Christian Horner has moved on. And Laurent wants a different way of running the team. He wants it to be a happy team, and has always been a bit divided for the last few years, but actually this team you can see coming together. They're taking their time. There's no rash decisions. This is a very skilled engineer at the top of his game. And if you look up and down the paddock, and I think this is quite interesting, Beck and Harry, lots of the team principals nowadays, they're not marketing directors. They've not come up through that route. They're engineers. They've come up through mechanics and engineers, and they know the sport so well. They're so passionate, and they want to bring together a cohesive team and for it to work for everyone. And I think that's really refreshing.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Jen, isn't it? Beck, we are seeing the rise of the engineer as team principal. Andrea Stella being one of them, Ayo Komatsu,
Alan Permain,
Jonathan Wheatley, Andy Cowell, who was very much instrumental in the Mercedes power units.
James Vowles, but strategist.
Pretty much, Toto Wolff was actually now a bit of an outlier there. Christian Horner no longer. Laura Mekies, of course. So we don't see the team owner as the team principal anymore. If you go back to sort of the Eddie Jordan days, or Colin Chapman and people like that. That's gone, and it doesn't look like that will come back.
I have a theory on this.
Ooh.
So, not that long ago, probably you can count on one hand that Formula One wasn't as popular as it is now.
Stop it.
And so you needed to go out there and find your sponsors, find your people to come in with their money, the partners, and you needed charismatic people at the top to go out and find that money. And Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, Zach Brown, they are very good at that. They are incredibly good marketeers. They're very good at doing all of that stuff that brings in the money. However, what's happening on track is it's becoming a more and more complicated sport, if you can believe it's even possible to become more complicated. We talked about it for next year, regulation change. It is absolutely huge. It is the chassis and it is the engine at the same time. That is unprecedented within Formula One. I cannot remember the last time we had both of those changes at the same time. And so what is happening on track is so important. And off track, because we've got film, we've got Drive to Survive. You're finding companies are flocking to you. So you almost don't need your team principal to be out there with the partners bringing in the money to allow you to go racing. They're sort of coming to you to a degree. You need people who can focus solely on what is happening on track. And I think McLaren have a really good setup. So they've got Andrea Stella, the engineer, who is the team principal, who does all of the day-to-day running of that team. And then you have Zak Brown, who is the CEO of McLaren Racing, and he goes and does all that schmoozing stuff that I was just talking about. And I think that works incredibly well as a setup, because Stella can do his job, Brown does his job, everyone knows which lane they're in, and they just get on with that. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the reasons they've been so successful, and that's why we're starting to see this shift towards the more engineering brain being at the top of that team. And I think we'll probably start to get a few more teams going down the route of that McLaren setup.
There was a really nice story in the build-ups this week involving Haas, who were doing some testing of previous cars out in Mugello. And as part of that, Romain Grosjean made a return to behind the wheel of a 2023 Haas car. And of course, Grosjean last raced in that Bahrain race in the 2020 F1 car, where he had a huge crash and was lucky to escape with his life, and it was a miracle that he made the recovery he did. Has obviously never stepped foot in a Formula One car since, and Haas, with this new testing program that they are able to deliver with their partnership with Toyota now, were able to give him that kind of send-off. But the reason I bring it up is because at the time when Grosjean was racing, the now team principal Ayao Komatsu was his race engineer, and Komatsu sort of returned to that role for Grosjean in those laps that he did in Mugello. I think it's quite a wet track as well, but it's just to highlight the whole progress that Ayao Komatsu has gone under, but also quite a nice feel-good story.
Oh, and you should watch the video of it, because as Grosjean pulls in, Komatsu's standing at the front of the car, and it's quite emotional.
And he had a standing ovation as he came in, and it was really nice to see Grosjean get that farewell, the one he didn't get in Abu Dhabi of that year. A man that achieved a fair bit in his career, but never quite stood on the top step of the podium.
He had a special helmet made for Abu Dhabi ready to go, and not the same helmet, but he had a replica made for his outing, so he still got to wear it. He still got his goodbye.
It was designed by his kids, I believe, so that was really nice. So, and he had a standing ovation from the Ferrari mechanics and Pirelli and everybody that was in the pit lane for Romain Grosjean, who is now racing out in the United States, but I believe does still pop up on the French TV's coverage of Formula One every now and then. I've definitely spotted him in the paddock within the last 5 years, but that's what's been going on down at Haas over the last couple of weeks. Back to the track action, as you can hear, we're well underway again. Somebody who is not underway though is George Russell. He was the reason we had the red flag. Jenny Gao, I don't think that car's going anywhere anytime soon.
Yes, they've put a table up in front of the car, which always is a sign, isn't it, that maybe it's not going to go out. And we just had confirmation from the team that the session is now over. For those of you who didn't see, the car was up on its stands in our garage just now, and they're not actually saying what's wrong with it. Might be that they want to just check out what went wrong, if they've found something on the data, or maybe they need to do a bit of a suspension change. Whatever it is, as I said, it's 2 foot up in the air, covers are off, and lots of the mechanics are fiddling around with nuts, bolts. It's that part of the time of day where it gets a bit greasy in the garage, and it doesn't normally do that, so you know that the car's gone wrong.
Yeah, but either way, crucial track time missed out for George Russell. We've got times coming in. Some drivers moving over to the soft tyre, including Esteban Ocon in the Haas, who's gone fastest on the soft, 1:31. 4:80 as Liam Lawson finds the wall at turn 17 on the exit. He had a bit of understeer, and the correction was enough to send him into the wall. The front right tyre comes clean off the rim, and he's dragged it to the entrance of the pit lane, but the floor has dragged along the circuit so much, the friction has actually caused flames to just light from the underside of that Racing Bulls. It has now just been put out naturally, but Liam Lawson, who was on a lap in the Racing Bulls, finds himself minus a wheel and going nowhere. And that is at a crucial time in the session where we're getting representative track conditions. It's brought out a red flag again. We're at 2 red flags now. What were we in Baku qualifying?
6 did we make it
a record.
Let's not do that again.
But only practice 2 so far, and steering wheel off as Liam Lawson just slowly extracts himself from the car. Now this is going to have an effect on how cars get into the pit lane, which has been closed. Now it's a red flag, the clock continues to count down, so everybody must make their way back to the pit, so they should be given special dispensation to cut around the pit lane, and as race control they closed it and have immediately reopened it again because they've realised they have to open it, and they are allowing them to drive around Liam Lawson.
You were talking earlier about communication. Where Liam Lawson has stopped is actually a bit of a blind corner, so if you're coming into the pit lane, you're going to hope that the drivers have been told that he's there, because he is standing right in front of his car.
Yeah, and I think there's a little gap in the wall there which he can actually get through, because I wouldn't want him walking down the pit lane. That would not be safe whatsoever. But Lawson just sort of standing there at the moment, looking rather forlornly at his car. We were actually riding on board with Liam Lawson at the time on the pitches. He was making his way down to the right-hander of 16 where George Russell had his crash, through the left-hander of 17. The rear steps out, he bangs the wall on the outside, and that immediately impacts the front right wheel, which takes and the rear right wheel, but it's the front right wheel rim that completely falls off, leaves some debris there for good measure as well, and it was a fairly hefty hit in the end, and huge sparks flying from the floor, dragging along. Yeah, just over 20 minutes left of this more representative session now. We were in the daytime earlier. Night has fallen, but we've had 2 red flags, the first of which was for George Russell, who found the wall. He's okay, the car not so, and he won't get out for the rest of this session. And we've just had another crash in the form of the Racing Bulls driver, Liam Lawson, the young Kiwi. He has also found the wall. He's out of his car, but the car is not going anywhere quickly. So that's 2 cars already out of this session. It's Esteban Ocon in the Haas who's currently quickest, ahead of Ferrari's Lewis Hamilton. Right, red flag is out then, so again more crucial time lost as Liam Lawson does walk into the pit lane, and as the cars continue to pile in. Jenny, what can you see from your position in pit lane?
I've actually just come down to Racing Bulls to see what the team are going to do and how they're going to do it. Lawson has just made it into the edge of the pit lane now, so it's in relative safety, as some cars have made it into their garages, other cars haven't. They're still waiting for the other driver, Isaac Hadjar, to make it into the pit box, so that's what all the mechanics are just waiting for eagerly, and to get that other car back as soon as they can. But we were talking to a lot of the drivers yesterday about how the braking, the sights, everything changes from the sessions that are light to the sessions that are dark. And I think this might just be another one of those cases, especially for the drivers that haven't done that much. The reference points are so different from day to night, and you really have to be on that for a driver. And a lot of those mistakes can happen when you're not quite getting it just right, and you're relying on the information you had from the first time you went out. Isaac Hadjar now just being pushed into the garage in the other Racing Bulls. So, and Lawson has not quite made it back yet.
No, and the car isn't being collected just yet either. Everybody has made it back to the pits now that was on track, and marshals are on the exit of turn 17 to clear up a bit of that Racing Bulls debris. But certainly for the marshals, hopefully some quick work for them, because this, as the first representative session, we get under the light, slightly cooler temperatures, and this is what we'll get for qualifying and the race. Crucial to try and squeeze in both your qualifying simulation and your race simulation as well. George Russell, the first one on the back foot, now Liam Lawson, just as the track was really starting to ramp up as well, as more rubber was being laid down onto the circuit. Well, a halt in proceedings, and now from 20 drivers, we are down to 18 of them. Before the red flag, it was Ocon, quickest in the Haas, ahead of Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz third, Behrman and Piastri the top 5, Norris, Leclerc are 6th and 7th, ahead of Hülkenberg, Alonso and Max Verstappen. Then Gasly was 11th, Lawson was running in 12th, ahead of Hadjar, Antonelli and Stroll the top 15, Tsunoda 16th, Albon 17th, George Russell was 18th, Gabriel Bortoleto 19th, and Franco Colapinto 20th. Right, has Liam Lawson made his way back to the garage? Jenny?
Well, he's made his way halfway down the pit lane. He cuts a lonely figure, in fact, because he hasn't got anyone around him. Normally they have a PR person, a marketing person, a mechanic, a physio, but right now he's just on his own, keeping his helmet firmly on. That means I don't want to talk to anyone, thank you very much. But now his physio has reached him, I believe, and he's just going, a protective arm around him, just keeping us lots away from him. But that'll be really disappointing for Liam. He was on such a good vein of form, and whoever's next to him, physio, I think, just puts an arm around him and shields him. But the cheers from the crowd, they still really like him, obviously closer to New Zealand and Australia than most places we go to apart from Australia. Shame for him and for the fans.
Yeah, it's a real shame for Liam Lawson, as you've been saying, off the back of a career best 5th in Baku. Took his career first points in Singapore in 2023. And actually, I suppose, Beck, when you step back, which is hard to do in Formula One during an active season, but you look at Liam Lawson's year and the absolute turmoil he found himself in, being cast out of Red Bull after 2 races, to be building back up and getting some good results in there. I mean, can we call that impressive, or is the jury out on Liam Lawson?
I don't know if I'd use the word impressive. Baku was impressive, 5th, and it was an absolutely brilliant defensive drive with, the Ferraris and all sorts behind him. So, I can't imagine how difficult it was to recover from what happened at the start of the season. He lasted 2 races in that Red Bull, and then he was unceremoniously dumped back down to the Racing Bulls. That is the biggest blow to confidence. We were just saying about how important confidence is in this sport, and he had his dented in more ways than he could have possibly imagined. He then went on to have a bit of a run, shall we say. Probably not the right word to use on radio, but he has picked it up. And actually, I think since the summer break, where you say, like, this is a brutal season, we've had 17 races, still 7 to go, there aren't many opportunities that you can take a step back. The summer break does allow that, and he has had a bit of a change in fortune since the summer break. Not always scoring points, but kind of getting closer. And then we saw what happened in Baku. This is a big blow for him, though. He doesn't know this track. You need to learn a lot about this track. We were talking a bit earlier about this is the driver's track, in the sense of those who are brilliant tend to shine on this track because it takes everything out of you. It's not just your raw racing talent, it's the mental side of it as well. You have to combine every single thing that you have to be brilliant around here, and you need the practice, and this is a really big blow for him.
3 points finishes in the last 5 races, though, for Liam Lawson. 2 8th place finishes in Belgium and Hungary, and then 5th last time out. Of course, Isaac Hadjar got that amazing podium in the sister car in Zandvoort. So Hadjar sitting very nicely inside the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship. Might be a good time to do the standings. I don't think I've done them yet. Oscar Piastri leads, by the way. 25 points, though, is the gap he has. That's the same as a race win to Lando Norris, who managed to close the gap, but perhaps didn't seize all the opportunity handed to him last time out in Baku. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen still in the fight. 69 points adrift of Oscar Piastri, though, so he needs to win the races remaining to continue to prove a thorn in the McLaren side. It's George Russell and Charles Leclerc, the top 5. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren lead the way by over 333 points. They are more than likely going to clinch their 10th Constructors' World title come the checkered flag in Sunday. All they need to do is score 13 points, or not be outscored by Mercedes by 31 points or Ferrari by 35 points. If one of the McLaren cars finishes on the podium, they will have the championship, no matter where Mercedes or Ferrari finish. Mercedes are the second team, with Ferrari in third, Red Bull adrift in fourth. 5th goes to Williams, cementing their hold on that. 17 points splitting Racing Bulls, Aston Martin and Sauber for 6th in the Constructors, with Haas and Alpine making up the rear of the field.
Just down at Mercedes and making my way up towards Liam Lawson's car, the Red Bull Racing Bulls that crashed. Just to update you quickly on George Russell, he overloaded the system when he actually crashed, so they have to do a full systems recheck and make sure everything's working again, which is why he won't be out. They have a long list of things that they have to go through and check to make sure the car is fully functional. And at the moment there is a mini JCB lifting a Racing Bulls car out of the way, so that's still blocking the end of the pit lane, which makes it very tricky to do anything other than make that car go out the way. But they are working on it, and it should be out the way in a minute or so, I'm guessing. And then the JCB needs to move out the way, and then we can get going again.
And that's what we all want, and that is what the hundreds and thousands of fans want, that have flocked to the streets of Singapore to get a glimpse of the Formula One racing action, which carves its way through the city streets. Elton John will be playing in the festival after the Grand Prix on Sunday. They always have huge headliners here in Singapore, and it certainly is a spectacle. The home and the originator of Formula One's night race, with amazing surroundings. You've got the Singapore Flyer, the over 540-foot Ferris wheel and observatory tower, which stands tall. You see it overlooking the final couple of corners. You get a great view of the entire circuit. You also have the Marina Bay Sands Resort, one of the many luxurious hotels here. It's got a 150-meter long infinity pool on the roof. I presume when you went to Singapore, that's where you stayed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. $5,000 a night. Who's not staying there?
That's how you do it, I'm told. But anyway, session back underway. You'll be pleased to hear with less than a minute to go as the cars head out to the pit lane. Jenny Yao.
Yes, there's been a crash in the pit lane. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I feel like the Ferrari got released, but it is Lando Norris, I think, in the wall in the McLaren. So they're just pushing him back at the minute. The Ferrari mechanics are on hand as well, so you think you know who's to blame in that. We'll have to look at the replay. But yeah, Lando Norris is going to need a new front wing. There's like a big bite out of it on the front right-hand side, and they're pushing him back. This is more time lost. What a disaster for them.
Yeah, there'll be less than 13 minutes on the clock for most of the runners before they even start their final laps in this second practice session. Front wing damage for Lando Norris, the man who sits second in the championship, the man who won in dominant style here last year with a bit of a odd crash in the pit lane as the McLaren mechanics now desperately try and get rid of that front wing and remove it. They do. The front wing end plate certainly with a scuff to the side, and the wall as well. The pit wall has taken a bit of a wounding with some scuffs on it as well.
I think it's okay, Harry.
I'd just like to make sure that everyone's all right. But as crashes go, I'd say that was on the lighter side. It wasn't a George Russell into the wall. And I think they found a front wing. And let's see what happened here. And they did just release Charles Leclerc straight into the path of Lando Norris, and that nudged him straight into the wall. Let's have a listen to it here. That was the sound of it. Slow speed. Here's what Norris said.
I just crashed. He just drove straight into.
Yeah, unsafe release by Leclerc been noted. I expect that, even though it's practice, he has been released directly into the path of a car and shoved it into the wall. Even though it was a light hit, it was very much wheel to wheel, and already the stewards have upgraded that to an investigation after the session. We're seeing it from Leclerc's perspective as well, and it's almost like he didn't even see him either. And it's not too late, and now he's looking out of his mirror in a bit of shock, I think, as to what's happened there. But it is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc that was released into Lando Norris that pushed him into the pit wall. Jenny.
Yeah, Zach Brown not impressed on the pit wall right now. He looked around, he could see exactly what had happened, and I think they might have a hefty bill just to repay McLaren, because front wings, they cost quite a bit, and it's very hard for the drivers to actually see what's going on around them. So we're getting a replay now down here as well, but it's almost impossible for them to see left and right, so they're reliant on their number one mechanic releasing them, and they get released by their engineer who's looking at all the GPS data, all the timing, so they give the thumbs up, and then the first mechanic just signals that now is the time to go, and they just pull out. They don't really look to the right because they can't see anything with the Halo device. So yeah, a bit of an incident that will be investigated. Derek Warwick is the driver steward this weekend, so we'll see what he has to say about that.
We certainly will, but the session is back underway then. 10 minutes and 32, 31 and 30 seconds remaining of this final practice session on the Friday. We'll have FP3 tomorrow, of course, but that's back in the daytime before we then go qualifying. So these really are... This is the last representative session, the first and the last that they'll get before we go qualifying. So those soft tyre runs very much disrupted by the 2 red flags we have had so far. So I think it's going to be busy and all hands on deck in this final 10 minutes. Just on Norris, and one thing we haven't quite spoken about, which I think probably deserves a bit of chat, Beck. Slow pit stops. More often than not, they've happened to Lando Norris on his car.
Are you being conspiracy theorist?
I'm just listing out the facts here. McLaren have decent. They produce some excellent pit stops, but with Norris's botched stops, Monza, Baku, Silverstone, Zandvoort, their average is not good. And ultimately, your average pit stop is surely what you want at the end of the day to be the quickest number. So, because then you're equal across both cars. But surely that requires a bit of investigation from the team as to what's gone wrong there, because it doesn't look like we've got another yellow flag out on track. It's gone away briefly. I think someone's just gone to the runoff area. Surely that requires a bit of an investigation as to consistency with the pit stops at the very least.
You would think a team like McLaren is already looking into that. Yes, it is bizarre that it's always happening to Lando Norris. I hear, though, in the next 7 races they're only going to do it to Piastri's car just to make it fair, so Andrea Sella gets what he wants. I'm joking, by the way. But no, it is unusual. It is strange. And it's bizarre that it's always the number 4 car.
He suffered 6 of the 7 slowest stops this year.
That is unusual for a team like McLaren, isn't it? Who are perfectionists on every single element of racing. And you can see it with someone like, so to give you an example about how important pit stops are, Jonathan Wheatley went into Sauber, soon to be Audi, and he is all about the military precision of basically everything within a team, down to the pit stop included. And when he went into Sauber, he pretty quickly identified that their pit stops were rubbish, to, want a better word. And he changed that almost immediately, and you can see the effect that has had on their racing. And actually, when Hülkenberg got that podium, finally, they were having amazing pit stops. And you cannot... The amount of time you lose in a pit, I think it was in Baku as well, wasn't it, where he ended up coming out behind the 2 cars rather than in front of them, costing him at least 2 places. He was faster than both of those cars, offset tyre, and he should have gone on and got another couple of places, you could argue. It is costing him so many points. I cannot believe that they are not looking into it.
I'm sure they are. It's almost unbelievable when you think about it and look at the numbers of it. But bottom line, too many slow pit stops. This is a team sport, but that is costing him massively when it comes to track position and potential points gained or indeed ultimately lost. So again, when we've got a faster pit speed limit here, increased from 60 to 80 kilometers an hour, every single millisecond makes the biggest of differences, particularly at tracks where overtaking is notoriously difficult.
Yeah, and the increase in speed they were calculating is about 6 seconds quicker. So that is huge. And actually, when you throw in the factor that it's around an 80% chance of a safety car, if you get a safety car at the right time, and then if you're under a safety car, you go at a certain speed, but you obviously lose a lot less time. Actually, the second stop becomes a lot more attractive, unless maybe you're Lando Norris and you think, I don't really have the confidence in the team to come in. And, it's at the end of the day, it's up to the driver to come in. They can tell you to box, but if he doesn't turn left into the pit lane, he's not going into it. So I quite like that they're playing around with these sort of things, with the pit lane speeds, and trying to... Okay, you can argue it's artificial, but you're not going to improve Singapore as a track. It's too narrow. These cars are massive. It's not great for overtaking. So try something else. Fine. I'm all up for that. But if you're Norris and you have no faith in the pit stop, every time you're pulling into your box, you're probably taking a deep breath thinking, oh, please, come on, just make it work. And then by the time you've thought that, you're probably, you should be out again, because they're normally around 2 seconds. His are taking 4-5 seconds, and that is costing him unbelievably valuable points. That 25-point difference between Norris and Piastri is exactly the same margin that Verstappen has taken out of Piastri in the last 2 races. It can be done.
actually looking at the pit lane and how it's set up, obviously McLaren are the first garage because they won the championship last year, and that's the order it goes in, championship standings order from last year. And they have the pit box very straight, very direct, but they can come at it directly in. They don't have to pass any other team. They just wheel themselves into the pit stop. So their pit box is very much square and vertical to the pit lane. Whereas if I come down here to Ferrari and all the rest of the teams, they're all at an angle facing in to the pit box. At varying angles, I have to say. Some of them are really tight in. But I just wonder how much of that change of mentality, the fact that they're first in, I don't know, it just seems strange. A lot of people have improved their pit stops and McLaren have gone backwards.
Every single aspect of a Formula One team's output is constantly scrutinised, so they will continue to find those marginal gains where they can. They'll certainly be hoping for smooth pit stops come Sunday afternoon across 62 laps of the 16th edition of the Singapore Grand Prix, which is expected to be a one-stop, but there could be a bit of rain in the air. There's rain expected throughout the weekend. How close it comes to actual session time remains to be seen on the day. 4.5, less than that, minutes remaining on the clock for this free practice 2 session. It's Oscar Piastri fastest with a 1:37.14. Verstappen is second with Alonso in third. Carlos Sainz is fourth. Lance Stroll, the top 5. Hadjar, Leclerc, Ocon, Hamilton and Tsunoda has just crossed the line to improve up to 10th ahead of Behrman. Then comes Norris, Albon, Hülkenberg, Gasly the top 15 with Liam Lawson in 16th. 17th is Antonelli. Colapinto is 18th. That early crash for George Russell has sidelined him. He's down in 19th. So too for Liam Lawson, I should say. Gabriel Bortoleto currently 20th and last, and just crossing the line now. He actually puts himself up into 15th spot, just behind his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. So some quick soft tyre running coming in right at the very end, but really difficult to get a gauge with the truncated session as to where exactly everyone will stand up over quali and race pace. So I quite like that. We're sort of going into a little bit of the unknown. We'll have FP3 tomorrow morning on Sports Extra 2. That will get the green light on for that for 10:30 in the morning to join us for that. But again, we're speaking a lot, unrepresentative session, but still will be crucial lap times gained. Piastri, though, at the moment, Beck in this FP2 session, he's about nearly a 10.5 clear of Max Verstappen. So a more confident start to the weekend than what we saw in Baku for the McLaren driver.
Exactly what he needed, and I think exactly what we all expected from this man. Cool, calm, collected. He made mistakes. Who doesn't? He admitted he was human. It was a bad weekend. We don't fully know why. I do think the pressure of the championship fight is getting to him. You certainly can't blame him for that. He's 24, going for his first ever World Championship. Might be his only chance at a World Championship given the reg changes next year. So yes, it's good to see him back up there at the top. Verstappen second. Fernando Alonso's having a good Friday as well, isn't he?
Certainly is. I mean, high downforce track, hopefully paying dividends for where that Aston Martin sits at the moment. With, we saw good performances from him from Zandvoort in Hungary, and was going well in qualifying before that as well. So certainly compared to the last couple of races, Alonso hoping for improvement there. So too for Lance Stroll, his teammate, who's never started inside the top 10 in Singapore, and currently sits on 11 Q1 eliminations too. It's actually the most with Nico Hülkenberg, and I think that's interesting because Hülkenberg has had the most Q1 eliminations, joint with Lance Stroll this year, has been out-qualified by Gabriel Bortoleto in the last 7 consecutive races. Nico Hülkenberg's quick, and he was always quite good in over one lap, but he's clearly lost some sort of confidence over one lap in this Sauber.
That's literally what he said in the media day yesterday.
Wow.
There you go. You should work in Formula One, Harry. He was saying
but
that he...
why?
But why? Well, we don't know that, do we? They never tell us the why. We only know the what. He was saying he has lost confidence in that Sauber. It is unusual. Oh, Norris Radio.
I suggest we just convert to continuous.
Why do you want to do continuous? I'm half a second off.
It's up to you, but I can probably make the car quicker if we do laps without DRS now.
Yeah, but my car's not half a second off, is it? My driving's half a second off.
Okay, we can find half a second now. Let's try.
Really interesting from Lando Norris to his engineer Will Joseph, looking, I think, to try and just get some continuous runs in. But Lando Norris saying, well, I'm half a second off, and that's because of me and my driving. It's not the car. And he is about half a second away from Oscar Piastri. So he is still circulating out on track. Here's Bortoletto's radio.
That's very nice from this Alpine. Oh, amazing. It gets nighttime and they get blind.
That was Gabriel Bortoletto, who wasn't particularly happy with the Alpine of Franco Colapinto, as Lewis Hamilton gets mighty close to the wall. And the graphic on screen says he was 0 centimetres too close to the wall, or perfect, however way you look at it.
I think he would say perfect.
Franco Colapinto also had a touch with the wall where Liam Lawson found his car to brake. Colapinto managing to survive that one, but then ran wide. Ollie Behrman nearly found himself going into the same bit of wall that George Russell did down at turn 16. Just manages to slow and control the car, cut the corner and rejoin. But that is the checkered flag out. Lando Norris still out there then, but not happy with his pace in that car. Half a second off his teammate Oscar Piastri at the close of this free practice 2 session, which Oscar Piastri should remain on top of. Nobody else is on a particularly flying lap in this final run, but that's an intriguing message from Norris at the end of this session.
Utterly fascinating insight into what goes into a driver's mind, and it would appear that perhaps he's slightly struggling with his confidence to come out and say it's not the car, it's me. Yeah, that's quite revealing. Not a happy camper while his teammate, championship rival, is on top.
It certainly is. Piastri, Hadjar and Verstappen, the top 3. Jenny, thoughts on the only representative session we've had today?
Yeah, well, 2 big crashes, that's always fun, isn't it, for us as spectators? And I just wanted to just question that Norris comment of, yes, he sounded very in trouble, doubting himself, doubting his own capabilities. But is this the mind games beginning? Is this him saying, I don't know where it is, I can't find it? When he's actually maybe keeping something in the bag, maybe he's not sharing all of his data and giving all of his tips away to Oscar Piastri, who likes to build across the whole weekend and come out on Q3, the final run, and go fastest. I don't know. It might be Asatosh, but I thought I'd put it out there.
I mean, if it is the ultimate bluff, then, I mean, he's a hell of an actor.
Oh, sandbagging. I thought you only talked about that when we were in testing, pre-season testing.
Well, I mean, that will be remain to be seen. I don't know. My gut feeling is that is genuine struggling for pace. As we're actually just getting a replay of Lando Norris as well, coming through the DRS zone, slams on the brakes into the left-hander at the end of turn 7 and just hits the curb, and then the wall rises. The curb pitches the car up as it rises up and drags along that red and white curbing, losing all the time. But on the other side of the garage, it won't be quite all smiles just yet, but certainly a productive day with 2 red flags to contend with for Liam Lawson and George Russell, finding themselves out of the session and headed for an early ice bath. Oscar Piastri fastest ahead of Isaac Hadjar. Max Verstappen 3rd with Alonso and Lando Norris the top 5. Stroll was 6th ahead of Ocon. Sainz with Leclerc and Hamilton the top 10. Tsunoda in 11th ahead of Behrman and Albon. The 2 Saubers round out the top 15. Hülkenberg ahead of Gabriel Bortoletto. Gasly was 16th. Liam Lawson's time held him for 17th ahead of Kimi Antonelli. Didn't get to see much of the Mercedes driver in this session. On the medium tyre, perhaps focusing on those long-run pace simulations for the young Italian down in 18th ahead of Franco Colapinto struggling in the Alpine, and George Russell, who crashed early doors as the practice starts begin. Beck, your thoughts in general up and down the field? What have you taken away from Friday in Singapore?
Piastri radio.
Before I forget, the cooling system knob is quite hard to turn.
Okay, we can check that.
I was going to say that knob is quite stiff, but didn't think that would be appropriate for TV.
Or radio.
I'm sure they won't have picked that up.
We got it. Thank you very much, Oscar Piastri, for that one. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, he's in a good place, isn't he, coming into this weekend? That's my big takeaway.
That's mind games.
That's mind games.
With us.
Yeah, I know. He's messing with us. He's messing with F1 TV as well. I think he looks great. He looks as if he's, well, quite literally back on top, topping the timesheets for a Friday. Never read too much into a Friday, but that is a good confidence boost for him. Even that radio message, he's clearly in a good place versus the one that we just heard from Norris, which sort of makes you think, oh my goodness, maybe Norris isn't in such a good place. So Verstappen doing exactly what we would expect from Max Verstappen this weekend, looking to bounce back. So it's all to play for.
All to play for, and into the relative unknown with a disrupted session. Thank you very much, Rebecca Clancy, for joining us on Friday. Thank you as well to Jeddy Gow in the pit lane. We'll be back for FP3 at 10:30, the green light tomorrow, before qualifying just before 2 o'clock. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.